Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Some time ago, I was blessed to be able to connect with Troy and Kathleen Billings, people I consider new friends. They are nationally known speakers on marriage and the family, authors of Simply Love, Catholic Marriage Day by Day, and I had them on the Good News Cruise, actually, to share their story with me about, and with all of us, about marriage, about the struggles of marriage, but most of all, the joys of it. Let's go to that conversation. I wanted to have you both on after we had met with each other to just give you the space to share with our listeners your story, to the extent that you'd like to share everything you've gone through to have brought you to the joyous, blessed married life that you have right now.
Yeah, so Troy and I met in college. I was at St. Mary's, he was at Notre Dame. We were paired up for a dance, and so that's how we kind of initially met. But Troy actually converted to the faith and asked me to be his sponsor. We were very good friends in college, but we did not date. And then I transferred to Franciscan University of Steubenville. This was like pre-cell phones, pre-internet, so we lost contact for about 10 years. And the Lord allowed us to go through very difficult seasons. We both actually were married once before. We both have annulments. When I left Steubenville, I was so excited to do ministry, and I did my thesis on the family as a domestic church. I had just this passion in me to go out and do marriage and family ministry. But the Lord had to really break me and refine me, and took me and Troy in his own parallel journey, unbeknownst to both of us, on a deep, painful journey of refinement, which all great ministries have that as their backdrop, right? So when we reunited 10 years later, we started dating. We were married in the church. I had 2 children from a previous marriage, and Troy adopted both of them. We have 3 children together, so 5 children. We have had 2 miscarriages, 1 ectopic pregnancy, and then in my first marriage, we lost a baby to SID. So we have 4 more in heaven collectively. And so when we got together, when we were first married, we decided we wanted to use what the Lord had allowed us to go through as far as our previous situations and the suffering to hopefully help other couples. But we knew we had to get grounded in our own marriage, right? So we just began going to Holy Hour together every week, and that's something we have continued for. We celebrate 20 years this year of marriage, so every week, thanks be to God, I think with very few exceptions of missing, we have done a Holy Hour together. And I feel like that's really been the glue for our marriage. So we started with that a few years into marriage. We said, okay, I think we're ready to maybe take some things on as far as ministry. We were asked to start a parish-based marriage ministry at our previous parish in the Chicagoland area. So we began a parish-based marriage ministry where we had a date night once a month. We did that for 10 years. And throughout that time, I started doing some speaking a little bit here and there on family as the domestic church, Catholic customs and traditions, a little bit on marriage and family life. About 9 years into the ministry, an inspiration came to me in adoration one night to write a book on marriage. And up to this point, I had been writing for a few different Catholic publications, had been a contributing author to a handful of Catholic books. But this inspiration came that night. We brought it to prayer, had a chance to pitch it to our Sunday visitor. And the inspiration was to write a daily devotional for Catholic couples, something that couples could come together once a day to pray together, to read a little something to enhance their marriage. And something that doesn't take a lot of time, but something that would be a gift to them on a daily basis or every few days. The book is actually designed day 1, day 2, day 3, not January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, right? So day 1 might be Wednesday, day 2, Saturday. We realize life is busy, but something that the couples could do together. We actually lost the book after writing the entire book. I'll let Troy share about that part.
So we wrote the book. It was about 100,000 words. We had it saved locally on the hard drive.
No.
Yes.
I know where this is going.
Well, we had it locally on the hard drive and also in the cloud in Microsoft OneDrive.
Okay.
And you would think, right, it's in 2 different places, 2 different, one's local, one's on a server, that you'd have it sufficiently backed up. But when we went to submit the book to our Sunday visitor, we got the blue screen of death on our laptop. So the entire laptop crashed. We rebooted it. We had a ghost image, so it looked like the icon on the screen. Behind it was no file, so we lost it locally. Then we went to OneDrive to retrieve it, and lo and behold, it was gone there. And so, long story short, of course, we sweated it out that evening. And then, thankfully, we had a really good friend who was a former forensic computer scientist with the Secret Service, retired. He had on his home computer system all the latest and greatest files. He said, "Can you give me your laptop and I'll take a look at it?" And so for 30 days, he had our laptop. He studied it. And, he actually said, who are your enemies? Who do you know, all right? And we were saying, well, what do you mean? And he goes, somebody maliciously wrote code to specifically delete that one single 100,000 word file from your laptop. Everything else was there, but the one file was gone. And so then we said, well, how can we explain what happened on the Microsoft server? So we actually went to Microsoft's tech support, talked to them. Lo and behold, another virus had attacked the file on the Microsoft server, and that also was the only file that was deleted in all of our files on OneDrive. So we had everything lost, and we had to rewrite the book painstakingly over the course of the next couple of years until it was finally, thankfully, published by our Sunday Visitor on February 14th, 2023.
Who are your enemies? Who are your enemies?
Yeah. Well, to this day, we don't know how it happened. And we did have the option to file a report with the police. And after a lot of prayer, we decided not to do that because we didn't want to involve our Sunday Visitor and have to put them through that. Mm-hmm. And so we just accepted the fact that, it was a very strong element of spiritual warfare. And we knew, okay, we need to be much more spiritually equipped the next time. We need to be smarter. He's very good with technology, but he happened to be traveling quite a bit during that time. Everything was on my computer. So the little bit he was home during this season, I never had a chance to be like, hey, can you help me back this up on a flash drive or something, right? Or I should have printed some of it out. So we never did that. So second time around, we were much more prepared. We saved it in lots of places, printed it out. We were much more spiritually equipped the second time around. Not that, we weren't spiritually prepared going into it the first time, but we realized okay, wow, this has the potential to, God willing, help many couples, and we've got to up our game here spiritually, So we had St. Benedict medal on my computer. We had lots of people praying for us. I always blessed my computer before we wrote anything. We kind of did a lot of different things to protect ourselves that second time around. But to this day, we still don't know what happened. But I can say that the Lord definitely refined us through the process, refined our marriage. The second version, I believe, is probably much better because it came, through a very difficult birthing process of suffering, right?
Well, I just wanted to say that I can't help but think of the passage, I make all things new, right? I mean, clearly there was a satanic attack of some sort to delete this book, and God made this even better, made it new.
So to back up just a little bit, when I pitched the book to our Sunday Visitor, it was, I think, July of 2018. It was at a conference that I was at. I had this scheduled to pitch this book to them. It was 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, I remember. And that morning I was also filming with Tammy Kaiser for something that was going to be on Formed on marriage. And so it was kind of a big day, and I looked to see what the feast day was that day, and it wasn't a saint I was familiar with, and I was kind of disappointed. I was like, oh, it's not like a saint I'm really familiar with, and this is kind of a big day. But I didn't think much more of it. Pitched the book that afternoon, did the filming that morning. That evening, went to Mass, and the priest who was celebrating Mass that night was a Franciscan priest. And the Franciscans have their own calendar of saints, as probably many of you know that. And so the Franciscan priest that night announced at the beginning of Mass that the feast day today for the Franciscans is the day that the San Damiano cross spoke to St. Francis, go and rebuild my church, which is falling into ruin. And I still, even now, I just kind of, get tears in my eyes and shivers thinking about that moment, because I realized then, in that moment, that that's what God was calling us to do, through marriage and family ministry. And I wasn't upset anymore. I was like, this is the coolest feast day ever, And then when our Sunday Visitor actually did offer us the contract, it was signed on October 4th, the Feast of St. Francis. So we very much saw God's hand at work, in the early stages, and knew God has a special plan for this.
We have to pause that conversation for the break right now, but I'm talking marriage ministry on the Good News Cruise with Troy and Kathleen Billings. Stay tuned for The Other Side. I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm talking with Troy and Kathleen Billings, new friends. I consider them new, dear friends, actually. And we're talking about marriage and family life and ministry and what that looks like. Let's go on to that conversation.
We have a quote on our website. It's something along the lines of, the world thirsts today for authentic preachers. People that they themselves can look to as someone who is truly trying to live the gospel in their own lives, right? And we have that on our website because we're very, very much, very keenly aware that if we're not living it at home, if we're not striving daily in the trenches of our day-to-day life to simply love, like the title of our book suggests, then we have no business trying to preach it, right? We have to first be living it. And so we're always, as a couple, kind of, checking in, right? And saying like, hey, do you still feel like this is where the Lord is leading us? This opportunity came. Should we do this? Do we feel like we're in a place where we can take this on? Is our marriage, fortified enough in this moment, or do we have the strength in this season of life to do this next, talk or whatever it might be, right? But yeah, we're always, by the grace of God, striving to live it. I'm very blessed to have a very good man as a husband, but we've absolutely learned.
And I'll second that with my wife.
So much, I think when you do ministry, you're very aware of like, I got to be living this, and it's kind of a further motivation to live it. So I'm actually kind of grateful for that aspect of ministry, right? We're definitely, I feel like, attacked more, but there's also that like, gosh, I gotta stay in the game. I gotta live this, right? I want to live this, but there's that further motivation too of, I want to be a good witness by my life. So,
Troy, what about your perspective as a husband, as the spiritual figurehead of the family, but being her rock, her pillar, her support through not just the ministry, but also life of marriage and the family?
Yeah. Well, obviously doing marriage or doing ministry, I'm very keenly aware that we're always being attacked. And, Father Mike Schmitz gave a great talk this morning about, Adam and Eve, and right, Adam being the first protector of the family, and that passed along responsibility to all of us men to be that protector. And so I absolutely feel that, first and foremost. Something else is we are very blessed to have a son who's a first-year seminarian in the Charlotte Diocese. And so, in addition to us doing ministry, and now David, all the work that he's doing in the diocese, it's even more so that important power. And so certainly the power of prayer, praying over my wife, praying with my wife daily, praying over and with my family daily. We are very proactive and big supporters and believers of the rosary and the power of that rosary. And so what I've seen as a husband, as a father, as the spiritual head of our family is first and foremost the intrinsic, inherent responsibility I have over my domestic church, but also the power of the rosary and prayer, that as we've striven to take that from our domestic church into the Greenville community, what that's offered to people there as well.
So it's not just important to pray with your spouse and your children, which is crucial, that is non-negotiable, but you also mentioned praying over her children, which is you exercising the high priesthood of your domestic church and household. For men listening right now, some of them don't even have a concept of what that means. What does that look like, and why is that important?
Sure. First of all, the power of prayer for a husband over a wife is the most powerful. It's the most potent prayer that anybody can say when you're married, because two become one, and we are now one in our sacramental union. And so what does it look like? It can be as simple and as basic as just, standing with your wife, hopefully holding hands, but if you're just starting off, right, just standing with your wife and just saying a simple prayer like, Lord, I pray upon the Holy Spirit to come to my wife, to help her through the struggles of the day-to-day, help her to be the best version of herself as she's striving to live for you, and help me as her husband to be the best support and pillar that I can be. And that's a very simple prayer, right? And you can also just simply pray the Our Father together, or any other prayer where it brings, because where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am also there. So that's as the husband. And then as the father, when you have little ones, tucking them into bed and praying over them and blessing them each night. Again, as a couple, we pray with our children together, but the power of just the husband as the head, the spiritual head of the family, there's nothing more beautiful and potent of passing along God's love than being there for your children and your wife.
And Kathleen, being the bride who receives this as a gift from your husband, and then carrying that forward to, you most probably pray over your children as their mom. Can you share what that experience is like for you?
Yeah, as Troy shared, his prayers for me are the most powerful, right? They're more powerful than even like the Pope praying for me. Like, it's really powerful. And when he prays for me, when he prays over me, there's something in my heart that's transformed, and like I feel those prayers. And if a few days go by where, maybe we're not physically together, and even, we haven't prayed together over the phone for one reason or another, I start to feel like, ooh, like something's missing. Like it's that powerful. And, yeah. And when I feel loved by him in that way, right? That's just one form of a way that he loves me, very powerful way of loving me. I feel empowered to be a better wife, to be a good mother. And when I don't have that, then I almost feel like a little, like not fully charged, right? Like I'm missing something here, to do my daily duty. And so God has this beautiful design that he is the head of the home. He has that leadership, and he needs to be my pillar within our home and to pray over me, so then I have the strength and the grace to be the best version I can be as a mother and wife in my daily duties. So,
if you don't mind me pivoting a little, but we had touched on this before, the loss of children and how that can affect families. Both of you have encountered this 4 times, and rather than break down the marriage, I mean, you're deeply in love with each other.
Yeah.
Share that with us.
I mean, the first thing I'll share is that, it is sad to lose a child, and I'm very, very thankful that we have children here on earth that we can raise. But, when children as babies die or in utero, they're instantly saints, right? And so we know and we trust, and we do this regularly. We pray through their intercession, and we also look forward to the day that we're going to be reunited with them. So, I mean, there is an inherent joy that comes with that. There's also, and let's be real, the struggle, the challenge between us when that happens, when either we lose a child to SIDS or just a miscarriage. It's always sad, because we both love children and would have had more if we could have. So let me pass it to you to talk about.
So we lost a child to SIDS many years ago. He would be 26 now, Dominic Fulton. So that's kind of exciting with what's going on with Fulton Sheen right now. And we know he's in heaven, right? The church teaches that the children we lose through miscarriage, or I also had an ectopic pregnancy. We're not quite sure. They're in this limbo state, right? But we do believe that the Lord is with them in some capacity, right? So there is a peace and a joy in that. But it's another form of refinement in our marriage, and it's definitely been very painful to lose 4 children. And it's different for men and women, right? Like, I'm going through the physical aspect of it, and Troy can only enter into it to the degree that I let him enter in. So I think it's very important for women when they go through a miscarriage to allow their husband to enter into that suffering with them, to allow them to help carry that cross with them. Because a lot of times the tendency can be like, you have no idea what I'm going through, this is so painful, like, you didn't carry the baby, whatever, right? But our husband co-created the baby with God, and it's just as much of a loss for them as it is for us as women. We just experience the actual physical side of it, but we're both experiencing the emotional and spiritual loss of it.
there are couples watching this who are just beginning marriage. There are some who are discerning marriage, some who are deep in the throes of marriage already. As a kind of final exhortation to realign our vision for what marriage ought to look like in God's plan, and to never lose sight of that.
Sure. I mean, marriage in God's plan, right? We are called to help each other get to heaven. That's first and foremost. And so, everything that we do should be with that lens. And, it's so counterintuitive to what the world teaches, right? We live in a very crazy place, and I'll just use that word, And so, but when you stay focused on the Lord and you say, look, we're here for a short blip of time, and it's literally like the dot of a needle on paper or something, or a ballpoint pen on paper. That's our time frame here compared to eternity. We want to get to heaven. And so, that's our first and foremost goal, and we have to just live it, simply love day by day, right? And making sure through the sacrificial acts and just, trying to be there for our spouse. So I'll summarize it that way from my point of view, and I'll give it to Kathleen.
Well, like Troy said, to get to heaven, right? And in any great adventure in life, and marriage is an adventure, you always want to start with the end in mind, right? And it's often easy to lose sight of that along the way. So always realigning ourselves with each challenge, with each cross that comes, with each beautiful moment, with each peak and with each valley, right? That we're ultimately on this journey to heaven. And each one of those moments is, God willing, going to get us closer, or if we work in cooperation with the Lord, and to be mindful of that. And if not, it might take us back a little bit, right? So to always keep our eyes on the end goal together, I think is, going to produce abundant fruit, and that will flow out from your marriage and be a witness to the world. So.
Thank you both so very much for your generosity, your time, your witness, your ministry, and thank you for your friendship. It's been really a blessing to me getting to know both of you.
It's an honor, Marcus. Thank you as well.